A huge game by Juan Soto and some late game heroics by Jeff McNeil led the New York Mets to an early lead in this weekend Subway Series.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, the New York Mets have a little 3-game winning streak cooking right now, as they have all of a sudden found some momentum after what was a brutal stretch of baseball. And there's no clear sign for sure that the Mets have completely snapped out of it, that they are going to carry this momentum all the way through till the All-Star break. But as I talked about on yesterday's show, this is a team that's in survival mode. And it's just get every game you can before this first half ends, and the Mets can then take a breather, collectively rest, and get some healthy players back for the second half. Each of these games is so important to just do whatever you can to find your way to a victory. And I also talked about how the Mets had to start winning games a little bit differently. It couldn't be the same recipe every time. It couldn't be what we saw early in the season, where the starting pitching really carried the Mets and the bullpen was elite. And the Mets only need to score 3 runs a game because they had the pitching to do so. Well, we talked about what dire straits the Mets are in this weekend when it comes to their pitching. They also lost another pitcher heading into the game on 4th of July, as Jose Butto went on the injured list with an illness. So now you have one of your better relievers on the shelf, as well as everybody else that has gone down. And you are going into a 3-game series with Justin Hagenman and Brandon Waddell listed as 2 of your 3 probable starters. And yet, the Mets found their way to a victory. Just an incredible performance across the board by the New York Mets on Friday. And it does start with Hagenman, who got his first MLB start. He's made a couple appearances for the Mets already this season, but they had typically used an opener before Hagenman pitched just to try to get him into the middle innings of the game, not knowing if he'd be able to face the teeth of a lineup right from jump. But because of the straits the Mets were in with their bullpen, the dire straits that is, they looked at their late inning relievers and said, well, if we pitch Huascar Brazoban as an opener, we're going to be left with Reed Garrett as the only leverage arm because Edwin Diaz and Ryan Stanek had each pitched back-to-back nights. So they had to give those 2 guys a rest. So knowing that you really were left on the back end with only Brazoban and Garrett, the Mets decided to go right to Hagenman. And early on, that plan really didn't work out because the first 2 batters that Hagenman faces, he gives up home runs to Jason Dominguez and Aaron Judge. But credit to Hagenman, he didn't lose the strike zone. He didn't fall off the attack mode. He just stayed with it, continued to throw strikes, continued to trust the defense, got through that first inning, and then Juan Soto reset the game pretty much immediately in the bottom of the first inning as Brandon Nimmo had reached base on it should have been a caught ball by Jason Dominguez, if we're being honest with ourselves, but it ends up being a double as Dominguez goes in on a ball instead of going back first, and it gets right over his head to give the Mets an early base runner after Francisco Lindor ends up grounding out and advances Nimmo to third. Juan Soto says, yeah, I'm going to hit a fly ball, try to get the run in. Instead, he puts one in the seats, goes to left center field on a cutter that was up and away, shows that great power to the opposite field. I think we're going to see a lot of those home runs to left center field from Juan Soto, and it was a huge one because the game just started over, and it sort of set the tone for what the rest of the game was going to be, which is, hey, if the Yankees get a lead, it's fine. Every inning is a chance to battle your way back into it because the Yankees were going with Marcus Stroman, and while Stroman had a good first start, as I talked about going into this series, this was the one pitcher that the Mets really could get on. And so it was so important that they did have a good day offensively against Marcus Stroman in this Yankees bullpen that they just never gave up. And I think it was a real difference in mentality watching the Mets play from behind in this game than what we've seen in the past. And part of that is the fact that they weren't in a massive, massive hole. Again, credit to Hageman, but also not being phased by the 2 early runs from the Yankees. And then Soto, again, hits that home run. It allows everyone to just get on the same page of, all right, this is going to be one of those games. And it might be one of those games where whoever hits last wins the game. But you just got to do everything you can to make the plays that are in front of you, to not get phased when the Yankees put one of the seats. And it really was a really just incredible fight that the Mets put out there, that they were able to come out victorious. They took a lead in the 3rd inning as Juan Soto hit a double to right center field. And then Pete Alonso got a base hit that scored Soto. He did a great job scoring from second on that play. Really good base running. That's something that we don't talk about enough about Soto is, yes, of course, it's all about the hitting for him, and he's not the best defensive right fielder. But I'll tell you what, he's a good base runner. He is a solid, high IQ baseball player. He might not be the best athlete overall if we're talking about his quickness, but he cuts the corners well. He gets good reads. He knows what he's doing out there, and he did a really nice job scoring that run. Perfect slide to get in. Mets have a lead. Yankees tied up very quickly. Cody Bellinger hits a leadoff homer in the 4th inning, and that ends up knotting up the game at 3 runs apiece. But if you look at the first 4 innings, Hageman gave up just those 3 runs and 3 solo homers. And again, attacked the zone the whole time. Did not issue a walk. I think that is a great lesson for a lot of the guys that are going to be pitching throughout this weekend. You know what? You might give up some runs. It might be a rough outing for you. Your ERA might not look great when you're going up against a good team, and your stuff might not always play in the zone. But you know what? If you give up a solo home run, that's better than a 3-run homer because you walked 2 guys before you gave up the homer because you were pitching scared. And Hageman didn't pitch scared. He really did a nice job. He got the Mets through 4 innings, having given up just those 3 runs. The game was tied. Yes, he did give up the lead technically in the 5th inning because he gave up a hit, but it was Austin Warren that came in that gave up the 2-run homer to Jason Dominguez. And you know what? Credit to Austin Warren. He buckled down and still got the Mets through the 5th and the 6th inning without any further damage. And so, yes, they were trailing 5-3, but they were trailing just 5-3, not 7-3, 8-3, 9-3, something insurmountable as they got into the late innings. And in the bottom of the 6th, Brett Baty got the Mets a run closer with a solo homer. I thought Baty played a great game, solid defensively. He continues to give you really good at-bats. I think if you were to look right now at these young infielders for the Mets, Baty, Mauricio, Vientos, even Acuna, who's down in AAA, the guy that's had the best season is Brett Baty. And in some respects, I almost want to say it's not close just because of the defensive impact that he's had. And yes, he's had some bad stretches offensively, but I feel like since he came back the last time, while there's still been ups and downs, largely his at-bats have been good. And in this game, his at-bats were good. You saw him go the other way against the shift where he was behind in the count against Marcus Stroman, shot one, right through where a third baseman would be playing, but with a shifted infield, an easy base hit. And then you see, of course, that big home run that got the Mets a little bit closer. And the Mets actually could have had more in that inning because Ronnie Mauricio ripped one into the right field corner, hit it so hard, and it was played so well off the wall by Aaron Judge that he wasn't able to get an extra base out of it. And then you had a ground ball where Jazz Chisholm is trying to get the force out at second, makes a high throw. DJ LeMay, who is a tall dude, jumps up and catches it. Just a boneheaded play by Mauricio, who didn't see the ball, didn't know where it was. And if you don't see the ball, you keep your foot on the bag. But instead, he was trying to be aggressive, I guess, and get the extra base. And so he runs past the base towards third, and it makes it very easy for LeMahieu to just simply tag him out. It's almost like if you're playing MLB The Show and you hit the wrong button and your guy just advances past the base where he shouldn't. It was kind of like that, but it could have been a chance for the Mets to bring a couple runners or have Lindor come up with a couple runners on. Instead, Mauricio runs out of that inning. It was okay, though, because the Mets were able to get the lead thanks to Jeff McNeil. You had him come up in the 7th inning with the Mets still trailing 5-3. 5-4 after Baty's home run. Huascar Brazaban pitched a solid 7th inning. He did issue a walk, but he struck out 3. That was the best that Brazaban has looked in a while. He struck out Judge and Bellinger in that inning. Bottom 7, Pete Alonso comes up with 2 outs. He draws a walk against Luke Weather, and really just a great at-bat. And a bat where Pete did not take the bat off his shoulder, but you know that he wanted to swing. He wanted to put one in the seats and tie the game up, but he showed really good discipline to continue to look at pitches outside of the zone. He did end up working a full count, but those 2 strikes were off the plate. Bad calls by the umpire. Pete Alonso stayed disciplined in his approach, was able to take that walk, brings up Jeff McNeil, passes the baton, and Jeff McNeil once again delivers. Had a great at-bat, got himself in a 3-2 count, 3-1 count first, and looked at a pitch that he thought was a ball. It wasn't. Count goes full. He gets a changeup low and in, and he puts the perfect swing on it, gets that barrel on the baseball, knew it as soon as he hit it. Great moment for McNeil as he looks into the dugout and is firing up his teammates without even having to look at the ball going over the wall because he knows that he got it. McNeil has played at Citi Field for a long time. He knows what it feels like when he gets that barrel on it and he's able to pull it down that right field line, and he gave the Mets that late lead that they needed. And then credit to Reed Garrett in a 1-run game after all of his struggles lately. He goes out there knowing that there's really nothing else behind him, gets the Mets through the 8th inning, had thrown 15 pitches. Carlos Mendoza talks to him. Can you go out there and finish off the game? He says he can. Able to get the job done to notch the save, but also a credit to Jeff McNeil again, because in that 9th inning, McNeil made an unbelievable play. DJ LeMahieu hit a sort of fading line drive. That bought a launch angle of 20 degrees, which is pretty wild, but he only hit it about 60 miles per hour off the bat, so it was just this dying flare or whatever you want to call it, and McNeil had a great first step. I mean, he was playing shifted a little more up the middle, and he immediately read it well, gets on his horse, takes the perfect angle to it where he didn't try to catch it. He tried to play it off the bounce, and the angle that it took allows him to cover enough ground to get there. And LeMahieu doesn't run well enough that McNeil's able to get to that baseball. He dives, and it just takes the perfect, kind of big hop, and he's able to swing his glove up and field it. He said after the game, once he felt it in his glove, he was like, holy bleep. Was just shocked that he was able to get to it, and gets up, fires, makes a perfect throw to Pete Alonso to get LeMahieu out. A huge play, back-to-back games for the Mets where they've had a key defensive play that has allowed them to have a less stressful 9th inning with Edwin Diaz on the mound to finish off that series against the Brewers. It was Luis Torrens and Francisco Lindor who just had the perfect caught stealing where Torrens put the throw on the money. Lindor had the tag right where he needed it to, that they were able to get Christian Yelich out despite an incredible jump on Diaz, and that out really neutralized any threat where instead of pitching with Yelich on second base and 1 out, he's now got the bases clear with 2 outs, and he gets the strikeout to get the save. In this instance, it was such a huge play by McNeil because it kept Aaron Judge on the on-deck circle without having him come up to bat. Had McNeil not made that play, the Mets would have needed a double play ball to avoid pitching to Judge in that spot. Instead, McNeil makes the play, then Garrett gets another ground ball, of course, hit to Jeff McNeil again. As rightfully so, the ball found the guy that was really the MVP of this game. McNeil makes the solid play, and the Mets get out to a 1-game lead here in this Subway Series, a chance potentially to even it up on the year. Mets win on Saturday, and they will have evened up the Subway Series at least as far as they'll have won 3 games, just like the Yankees have won 3 games. Then I'll come down to Sunday to see if the Mets can get a sweep. But you don't have to think that far ahead. You just have to appreciate this game. I talked about it going into the series, how the odds were stacked against the Mets, and if they even won 1, that would be huge for this series. They have a disadvantage in the next 2 games as well when you're looking at the pitching matchup, but that's fine. They got to win. It was a gritty effort, and it shows a lot about this team and the fight that they have. And hopefully, if they can maintain that fight, they're going to be able to squeak out some more wins, whether it's in this series or the next 2, despite all of the injuries. If they play like that and they don't play like they don't have a chance, they don't get down themselves, everybody just does what they can control, this team has a chance, regardless of the adversity that they're facing, to keep winning games. Awesome victory by the Mets. I want to talk about Jeff McNeil a little bit more in the next segment, though, because Jeff McNeil is legitimately playing like an all-star right now, so I want to go through that a little bit more here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you want to head to the ballpark with your friends or family and check out a game? It's game day today. Suddenly you realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time is going to come in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress, and Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, and the prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. When I go to games, I wait until I'm walking to the security line, ready to get into the ballpark. Then I buy my tickets. Game Time has the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying tickets. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app and look for tickets to any exciting upcoming MLB game like today, Mets versus Yankees. You still got a couple Subway Series games left to try to get to. You could take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On MLB. That's LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now, during the game, Mike Petriolo of MLB.com sent out this tweet, and he said, a year ago tomorrow, which was July 5th, when he sent the tweet on the 4th, obviously, Jeff McNeil homered against Paul Skeens. And since, he has been a top 25 hitter in Major League Baseball. What he was referring to is weighted runs created plus. That is a stat you can find over at Fangraphs. That's an all-encompassing park-adjusted metric that tells us who are the most valuable hitters in the game with a league average of 100. So if Aaron Judge is unbelievable, he might have a 200 WRC plus, that means he is 100% better than your league average hitter. If you have a guy like a Mark Vientos, and I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air here, but let's just say Vientos this year has a 75 WRC plus. Last year it was 130. Well, last year he was 30% better than your league average hitter. This year he's 25% worse than your league average hitter. If you look at Jeff McNeil since July 5th, 2024, his WRC plus is 139. That means he is, again, 39% better than your league average hitter. And a good way to understand WRC plus, if you are from 100 to 110, that really is more like league average range. You could be obviously slightly above league average. Really, I'd say 90 to 110. Like anything in that range, those are guys that aren't just giving away at bats, but also guys that aren't really above average contributors. You get to 115 to 123, like that range, the smaller bubble. The way we look at that when you're talking about people who evaluate baseball for a living, we're looking at players like that. We're saying, all right, those guys are not quite all-star level performers, but they're really solid offensive players. You know, if they're a good defender, a guy that puts up a 119 WRC plus, he might be a 4-win player. That's a really good starting level player in the big leagues. Once you get to 125 on your WRC plus and beyond, and particularly once you clear that 130 threshold, you're talking about a really good hitter. So when you look at Jeff McNeil, who over 105 games played has put up a 139 WRC plus, you know, saying he's a top 25 hitter in baseball, that shows you how few hitters really are able to maintain that level of offensive production. He is a really good hitter, and we forgot about that because he had a year and a half stretch, if you look at 2023 and the first half of 2024, where it did seem like Jeff McNeil had lost it, where it didn't seem like this was a guy that even at times had his head in the game. And I really don't think that Jeff McNeil ever, mailed it in like maybe the perception can be, because a guy, when he's not right and he's not impacting the game, it's bad if he's not hitting 300, which was sort of the baseline for McNeil in the past. It's like, oh, well, what's he doing for you? And then all of a sudden people start talking about his golf game and, oh, McNeil got the contract. Does he care? I think this is a guy that has tried the whole way through, that really did have to adjust who he was, because who he was in 2022, playing against the shift, using his bat like that magic wand and finding a hole and just leaning into bat to ball. And it didn't really matter how hard he hit the baseball. It was just about not striking out, putting the ball in play, and doing the same thing that he's done where it comes to making that distance shorter first base by the fact that he I remember we had an article at Mets Rise years ago. It's a really good piece. I can't remember who did it. But we had an article from one of our writers, and I was an editor there, who compared Jeff McNeil to Ichiro Suzuki. And the reason why he made that comparison was because Jeff McNeil gets a great first step out of the box, where he swings and he really makes that reaction to first base. very quickly, where it almost is not to the extreme of Ichiro, where he would swing and run towards first, but something along those lines. And as he has gotten older and he has lost the step, some of those infield hits have gone away. And so Jeff McNeil has had to redefine who he is as a hitter. And I think now what you're seeing with Jeff McNeil is this fully realized version of himself, where it is the combination of the elite bat to ball skills, knowing himself now as an athlete, and knowing that while he has maybe gotten a little bit slower, he's also gotten stronger. And I think having the torpedo bat also helps a little bit with the barrel, having the weight distributed in an optimal place for Jeff McNeil, where if he finds that barrel and he pulls the ball down the line, he's going to lead the yard. And you saw that with the big home run in this game. So now you're looking at the hitter that he's been for 105 games played. It's 16 home runs. So you extrapolate that out. I mean, you're looking at a guy who is clearly now a 20 home run bat. This year he's got 9, and he's only played in 54 games so far this season. So, I mean, you do that, you times 54 times 3, that's 162 games. You times 9 by 3, that's 27 home runs. Obviously, a Jeff McNeil is not going to play 162. I don't think that he's ever going to leave the yard 25 times necessarily, but he can hit 20 home runs. And if you look at that rate over 105 games played, and you look at that over 162, we're talking about 24.6 home runs. So now a 20 to 25 home run bat who's also walking more this year than he ever has his walk rate over 10% for the first time in his career. The only time he was close was 2020 in a shortened sample size. So now you're looking at him walking more, so he doesn't have to hit 300. But if he's hitting 270, and right now he's at 268, but he's walking more, he's got that on base percentage over 350 if you're looking at what he's done over this past 105 games. So since last year, he's getting on base at a 350 clip. He's slugging at a 500 clip. Now he's an 850 OPS guy. That's a really good player. And you look at what he's done this season comparative to other second basemen in baseball. I'll tell you, second base and third base this year are two of the weakest positions in the game when you're looking for top-end offensive contributors, positions that in the past would have a lot of guys that could really be above-average hitters. Right now, there's one elite second baseman in baseball. One. That's Ketel Marte. Everybody else is on a far different tier than Marte. And Ketel Marte is starting at second base in the All-Star game, and rightfully so for the National League. If they're going to roster another second baseman, and they don't have to, they can just bring more shortstops. I mean, why not have Trey Turner and Elly De La Cruz on the roster? They certainly should not pick a second baseman over one of those two shortstops. I think Elly and Trey Turner both deserve to be part of the game this year. But if they were going to, from the coaches, select a second baseman, you can make a case for Jeff McNeil. If you look at WRC plus this season after McNeil's big game, he's up to a 133 WRC plus. That is the second best mark in the National League behind Ketel Marte, who I don't have it in my notes here, but I think his WRC plus was in like the 170s. He's been unbelievable. But behind him, you got McNeil, you got Brendan Donovan, and you have Bryce Terang. Terang, more of the defensive value in base running that props up his WAR, because he's actually the second most valuable second baseman in the National League based on WAR, just a point ahead of Brendan Donovan. Donovan's got a 124 WRC plus. McNeil, again, 133, and his WAR is at 1.3. That was going into the game today. That's before the home run, the great defensive plays, and all that. So his WAR total will go up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he got it to about 1.5 wins. He's played 30 less games, though, than Brendan Donovan and Bryce Terang. So there really is a case to be made that Jeff McNeil has been a more valuable player than these two guys. And particularly, let me just pull up the stats again here on McNeil versus Donovan, because it really did kind of show to me that Jeff McNeil actually has a case to be an all-star. I don't necessarily think he's going to be, just because of the games played. And again, you can roster other players. Who knows who's going to make the all-star game from the Cardinals? Brendan Donovan certainly could be their all-star, though granted, I think they have some pitchers that probably deserve that honor, Sonny Gray and others. But you look at second baseman, and I mean, really, if we actually even just look at all of Major League Baseball, I mean, you have a couple guys in the American League. You have Brandon Lau, who's got 19 home runs. You got Jazz Chisholm, who's got 14 and 57 games played. So there's some guys, and Gleyber Torres has had a good year. He's starting for the American League side. But when you focus in on the National League, again, it really comes down to Ketel Marte, Brendan Donovan. You can look at Nico Horner, who's had an average offensive season with the great defense. Otto Lopez has been a nice surprise for the Marlins. Now he's playing shortstop. But you look at McNeil comparatively to Brendan Donovan. Yes, Donovan's hit 293. McNeil in the season. Now, what's the updated batting average? It was 257. Now you're looking at 259. So regardless, around 260. You look at the on-base percentage. Jeff McNeil, we said now he is at 347, so around 350. Brendan Donovan, 364. But the slug difference is what really changes things, because you look at an OPS standpoint, Jeff McNeil, an 817 OPS going into the day today before the home run. You had Brendan Donovan at a 785 OPS. So McNeil has had a better OPS. He is playing a good second base, and he's playing center field. Regardless of if he makes the All-Star team or not, Jeff McNeil is playing like an All-Star again. And that changes everything for the New York Mets. It's one of the biggest revelations of this season for the Mets, because you went into the year and you had a ton of Mets fans who were just saying, cash Jeff McNeil aside. Can you try to trade him somewhere? Because you have Acuna, you have Beatty, you have Mauricio, you have Jet Williams on the way. There's a lot of Mets fans that were ready to give up on Jeff McNeil. And I was saying at the time, look, Jeff McNeil, I remember going into the season saying, for one, you're not going to that McNeil is more valuable to the Mets than it'd ever be in a trade, because the contract, not a lot of teams were going to take that on based on his last couple seasons. But also, I would talk about the second half, and I was very doubtful of Acuna going into the season, just being able to put it all together as an offensive player. And I felt like the best possible outcome for Acuna was probably not going to be that much more valuable than McNeil, just his floor. And then the best outcome of McNeil is still this really good player that we saw in the second half last season. Now you're watching it again, and legitimately one of the best second basemen in baseball again, and also one of the best utility men. I mean, how many guys are going out there playing center field and playing up the middle defensively in the infield as well? I mean, that's a tough chore, especially for a guy that's 33 years old, but here is Jeff McNeil still doing it. And it's really awesome to see just this resurgence for Jeff McNeil, where now all of a sudden you look at that contract and you're saying, yeah, really good decision by the Mets. Good to have him around. And I think it's one of those things too that to me is so refreshing about this version of the New York Mets under Steve Cohen. It's the ability to let some of these guys who have proven themselves as quality big leaguers stick around. And yes, big leaguers go up and down. They're not always going to have the best seasons. Last year, Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso were not great. Even Brandon Nimmo, by his standards, did not have a great season. He was good in some departments. The power department, stealing bases in a way he hasn't before. But because of the injuries and everything he played through, it was not as complete of a season as the 2 years prior, particularly the 2022 season that got him paid. But the Mets have kept these guys around. And now you're seeing on a good team with a couple of superstars out in front with Lindor and Soto, these guys that were the centerpiece of the 2019, 2020, well, Lindor came in 2021, but that era of Mets baseball, those guys that were so important, now they don't have to lead the charge. They're your third through fifth best players. And in those roles, in that proper context of a winning team, all these guys just get so much more valuable to you. And that's what we're seeing with Nimmo. That's what we're seeing with McNeil. You look at this game, the Mets are in position to win because Juan Soto was a superstar. Because Juan Soto, when the Mets were down 2-0 the first inning, got them back in it with the home run. Because Juan Soto got the Mets a lead after that because he hit the double and he scored on Pete Alonso's base hit. And so early part of the game, Juan Soto is what kept the Mets in it. He was 3 for 3 to start the game. Every single at bat was a great one. But then you have a Jeff McNeil, and Pete Alonso gets on base for him with that critical walk in the 7th inning and gives him a chance. And Luke Weaver is actually a pretty good matchup for Jeff McNeil because Luke Weaver is a guy that works the bottom part of the zone, and that's Jeff McNeil's happy area. You get a low changeup for Jeff McNeil. If he can get to it and get a barrel on it, he's going to put it in the seats, and that's what he did. And then defensively, guys been playing a lot of center field. You forget, oh yeah, he's actually a really good second baseman too, and he makes that awesome play. So McNeil really has become such a huge part of this team. He has changed the math on the Mets and what they can do as a team, because I think you went into the season thinking, all right, well, they got 4 guys. They got Soto, they got Lindor, they got Alonso, they got Brandon Nimmo. Those are your 4 guys that you can pretty much go to the bank. They're going to be above average starting level players in the big leagues, and hopefully any and all of them could have all-star seasons. Jeff McNeil, a lot of times we forget this, 2-time all-star. Jeff McNeil won a batting title. Jeff McNeil was on Team USA in the World Baseball Classic in 2023 because that is the level of player that he was, that he had reached that status of being in consideration to be on that team. I think early on he was starting too. I think Tim Anderson eventually grabbed the spot from him, if memory serves correctly. Bobby Witt Jr. was coming off the bench as a pinch runner. That's how much the game has changed in a couple of years. But Jeff McNeil, the fact that he was in consideration to be on that roster shows how good of a player that he was. And now he's reminding us he's a really good player. He's one of the best homegrown Mets. And really, if you talk about developmental stories, one of the best draft picks the Mets have ever made and developed into this guy. Huge season for him so far. So happy for Jeff. And just one of those games where you look back and say, yeah, that was the Jeff McNeil game. He really carried the Mets in a Subway Series where this team had all the odds stacked against them. It might be their only win of this series, but that was enough. That was all they had to do this weekend, and now you're playing with house money. We'll see if they can do a little bit more. I'm going to talk about Game 2 in the next segment here, and I also want to give you a couple updates on some pitching performances in the minor leagues, as well as some rehabbing players. We're going to go through all of that here to close out the show in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We're going to updates from me anytime, news breaks from the match. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. Get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Well, let's go through a couple of performances from some top pitching prospects in the Mets system. We're going to start with Jonah Tong, who now has the distinction of being the first pitcher in franchise history for the Binghamton Rumble Ponies to have won Eastern League Pitcher of the Month in back-to-back months. Did it first in May. Now he was just awarded that honor for June, where he pitched to a 0.93 ERA, gave up 3 earned runs of the month, each of them coming in a different start. He had 3 starts where he gave up a run, a couple where he had shutout performances. That was across 29 innings pitched. He had 43 strikeouts. Also had 2 11 strikeout performances in June, and now he has a 10 strikeout performance in July. Another great outing for Tong, who goes and allows 2 runs, 4 hits, 2 walks, strikes out 10. Did not get the innings pitched here. I think it was 5 2/3. I know he pitched into the 6th inning, but did not finish 6. Another good start for Tong, who is clearly in line to get a promotion up to AAA at some point, but I think the Mets seemingly are going to keep him in AA for the first half, and maybe then they'll make that move to promote him in the second half. Or you can go back to my conspiracy theory that they want to keep Tong dominating in AA until the trade deadline, just in case they need to swing a big blockbuster, and they just want to kind of preserve some of the trade deadline value of a guy like Tong, who's still in AA, as well as Jet Williams, who's still in AA. Regardless, though, another great performance by Tong, who continues to stand out among Mets prospects. Now, another guy who has been standing out lately is Brandon Sproat. He will not start this weekend. David Stearns was very clear. He does not like to rush guys up to make a spot start when it comes to his top pitching prospects. I thought that there was a chance that, considering the straits that the Mets are in when it comes to all these injuries, that they might consider at least holding Sproat back to pitch on Sunday, just in case, just to watch what might have happened on Friday and Saturday, and just to know that they don't need an arm. The Mets believe in what they have. They believe in they're turning over their bullpen, that they can survive this weekend. So they let Sproat make his start, and it was a really good one. And I think part of this too was he made a very clear change in mindset his last start before this one. And I really wouldn't have agreed necessarily if you told me at the beginning of this week on promoting Brandon Sproat. For me, I wanted to see Nolan McLean come up, because I feel like McLean has been in a really good rhythm all year, and I feel like he'd be able to survive a start, and not just survive, actually thrive in a start. So for me, that was always the one. But when McLean pitched on on Thursday, I thought, I guess I'll take Sproat over Brandon Waddell in a bullpen game. Instead, they're going to go with that. But again, to go through the start that Sproat had on Friday on 4th of July, 5 innings pitched, allowed just 2 hits, 1 walk, struck out 8. So over his last 2 starts, he's gone 11 innings, 4 hits, 4 walks, 14 strikeouts, no earned runs. Suddenly, Brandon Sproat is pitching really well. He's had Francisco Alvarez to pitch too. I think that's been very helpful for him. But Brandon Sproat is definitely turning a corner in this season, and that's a really good thing for this team because you never know what you're going to need in the second half. The more guys you have performing well in AAA, the better coverage you have for when things pop up. And now I think they have a couple guys in Sproat and McLean that certainly could be arms for the Mets down the stretch if they need them. Now, Francisco Alvarez, like I mentioned, caught Sproat. He went 0 for 3 with a walk, a run scored, struck out 3 times. Not a great game for Alvarez. Brooks Raley pitched after Sproat. Now he's up to Syracuse. So before this, he had made 3 appearances in St. Lucie, 2 appearances in Binghamton. Now he's up to AAA for the final stages of his rehab, and he had a good outing. He gave up a hit and a walk, but another scoreless inning. So far, you look at what he's done. He's pitched 6 2/3 innings without giving up a run, and he has 11 strikeouts, something along those lines. Really good stuff. His velocity's up a little bit from before the Tommy John surgery. Brooks Raley's getting very close. I mean, theoretically, if the Mets wanted to, they could call him up this week. Now that he's up at the highest level of the minor leagues pitching, and he also just pitched on 1 day's rest for the first time, so that was a big hurdle for him. I'd imagine he's not going to pitch on Saturday. I don't think they'll rush a back-to-back for him, especially because that would be 3 times in 4 nights or 4 days. But I wouldn't be surprised if he pitched on Sunday, and then you can give him, Monday everyone's off. Tuesday you can give him an off day, give him a little bit of a break, and then you might throw him into back-to-back games in AAA just to see what that looks like, so that you know that he can do that when you call him back. I still think they're probably going to play it safe, let him just have the rest of this week and all of next in AAA. But it's also an arm that you can bring up. And the way that this team is shuffling guys, we've talked about it, sometimes you get to a point where there's just nobody you can call on. Brooks Raley's the guy you can call on. Now, once you call him up, you can't send him back down for more rehab games. So you have to be really sure. You don't want to rush him. But if you get to a point where Brooks Raley pitches on Sunday, does great, throws on, Tuesday again on a day's rest and throws well, like who knows how they're going to actually structure this last week of his rehab. But there's every chance you might just decide, we're going to call him up a little bit early because we need an arm on the Saturday before the break. And Brooks Raley is scheduled to pitch for the last time in the first half anyway. Let's just have him have that appearance in the big leagues. So we'll see. He will be back, though, to start the second half. I can almost guarantee that. I mean, his time on rehab is coming up anyway because you can only have 30 days spent on an assignment unless you petition the league because there's some type of a setback. Obviously, he hasn't had one. So he will be back soon. I still think it'll be right after the All-Star break. Now, let's talk about Game 2 today. Subway Series, Carlos Rodon versus Frankie Montas. Now, Montas is huge for the New York Mets because their bullpen, it's in dire straits. It really is. You lose Jose Butto to an illness. Guess he has been unavailable all week. And so with the Mets being so taxed, they just decided, whatever's going on with him, he wasn't going to be available maybe this whole weekend. They didn't really get into the details, but they decided to make a move, put him on the 15-day IL. So now you lose Butto for the rest of the first half. That's the bad news. But you were able to get Chris Devanski up a little bit early. So now you look at the composition of the Mets bullpen. You got Devanski, you got Rico Garcia, you got Richard Lovelady. My guess, because of Austin Warren throwing, I think, 34 pitches to get through 5 outs, I think Warren's going to go back to Syracuse. Zach Pop was just signed. I talked about it on yesterday's show, how they might sort of slow play activating him. We saw them do that with Justin Garza. Here it is again, or maybe it was Diego Castillo, but regardless, Zach Pop probably joins the team in place of Austin Warren. So you have 4 guys now that you really don't know what you're going to get out of with Devanski, Rico Garcia, Richard Lovelady, and Zach Pop. You're 4 guys that you trust in the bullpen. You got to use sparingly. And I feel like they almost have to from this point on throughout the rest of the first half sort of use them in tandems so that they can get them all off days. So on 4th of July here, your tandem was Reed Garrett and Huascar Brazoban. I think for this upcoming game, if you have a chance with a lead late, your tandem is Edwin Diaz and Ryan Stanek. And I don't necessarily expect Garrett or Brazoban to pitch in this game. They could save Brazoban to be the opener for Brandon Waddell on Sunday because Waddell is working on 3 days rest, will not have nearly as many pitches to give as Hagenman did. So if they want to, they can do that, or they can go the same route where they save Brazoban as a leverage arm. I think they probably will. They could always start somebody else on Sunday as a bridge to get into Waddell's, bulk relief appearance. Regardless, if you look at the rest of this weekend, you just say, all right, the Mets have to survive 18 innings. Well, now let's just say the most you're going to get from Diaz and Stanek is an inning apiece, because I don't think that they're going to pitch 4 games in 5 days. So they're not going to pitch on Saturday and Sunday. There is a chance that they might do that with Edwin, just because Edwin can be a workhorse at times. And let's just say he has an 8-pitch inning tonight or this afternoon. Game starts at 4. It'd be nighttime when he pitches. Regardless, if he had a really short outing, maybe, but I wouldn't count on it. So let's just say 2 innings from them. Let's say 2 innings from Brazoban or Garrett, or let's say, maybe a couple of these guys get 4 outs. Altogether, the most I think you could expect out of Diaz, Stanek, Brazoban, and Garrett for the rest of this series is 5 innings pitched. That's the most. You got 18 innings to cover. Waddell, I don't think he's going to go more than 3 innings on Sunday. That's what he's done his last 2 appearances. He has been shortened up a little bit. He hasn't been going on a full starter's workload in a while. I don't think he's going to give you 4 or 5 innings unless he's just super economical on his pitch count. So I would project maybe 3 innings. So what does that mean for the rest of your staff? Between your high leverage arms and Waddell making the spot start on Sunday, the bulk relief appearance, that's 8 out of 18 innings. So the other 10 innings are going to be covered by Devansky, Garcia, Lovelady, Zach Pop, or whoever else you get up after some of those guys pitch, and if you do more of that shuffling on Sunday. 10 innings from those guys, as well as Frankie Montas. So that's where Montas is so key for this team, because if he can get you 6 innings today, that is so massive. Let's just say the Mets have a lead through those 6 innings. Well, now maybe there's an inning where you can drop Lovelady in there. I think the Mets probably trust Lovelady a little bit more than a Devansky or Garcia or a Pop. I think they do actually like Lovelady's stuff. So maybe he gives you an inning, and then you can go to the Stanek Diaz, lights out ending, hopefully, and get another win. I think that's like best case scenario strategy for this game. I guess best case would be Montas goes 7. You go Stanek Diaz, you get out of there. That's just a dream. That doesn't happen, though, and let's just say Montas only gets you 4, or even worse, doesn't even get you through many innings at the beginning of the game. It has to be pulled. I mean, this team's going to be in for a world of hurt, because there's nobody left to call on from your minor league system to make a start. I don't even know where you would go, honestly. So the Mets need a big start from Frankie Montas, who was tipping pitches his last 2 starts. So it's going to be a tough one, but this is a moment for Montas to step up. And if he does, I think that's going to fire up this team. And I think they're going to be able to win this game if they get a good start from him. If he goes toe-to-toe with Carlos Rodon, who has been good this year, all of a sudden I think the Mets can win this series, or maybe even do some real damage in this series and win the second game and be dreaming of some big things on Sunday. But now it's first things first. Try to win a game, and if you get good hitting, if you get guys stepping up in that bullpen, you never know what can happen. You got lefties on the mound the next 2 days. I think the Mets are going to start Tyrone Taylor this entire series. They started him in this game against a righty. I think just because they're trying to get as many outs as they can. And so having Taylor in center field means you might steal an out or 2. And if you do, they're probably big outs that are robbing extra base hits. So I think Tyrone Taylor will start this whole weekend in center. I think Jeff McNeil will start the whole weekend at second base. I would not be surprised if that was the last we saw of Ronnie Mauricio for the weekend. And you see, Mark Vientos getting in there instead of him, whether that's at DH or third base. You could see Brett Beatty maybe bench for a game if you want Marte to be in there at DH, have Vientos at third, McNeil at second, Taylor in center. Or you always could see the Mets decide to go with Vientos at DH, Beatty at third. But I think that is what we're going to see throughout the rest of this weekend here. We'll see how it all plays out. I will give you guys another show, of course, for your Sunday morning. I don't believe I'm going to go live after the game on Saturday. It'll be a game time decision again, but I think I got some plans. So I don't believe I'll be going live, but I will be recording a show for Sunday morning. And then the plan is that I will have a live stream at the conclusion of the Subway Series on Sunday, where I will break down everything from the game, and then you'll get your normal episode of Locked On Mets on Monday, sort of setting the stage for the final week of the first half. I appreciate all of you who took the time on your weekend to tune into this show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports with local experts from each team, league experts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.